Good morning, everyone. Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Heidi Heitkamp, former Senator from North Dakota and Director of the University of Chicago's Institute of Politics, and Dr. Josie Marie Griffiths, President of Dakota State University, to the stage.
Thank you. Thanks, Olivia. One of your great graduates who's been running around making the trains run on time here. President, I'm so excited to be here, and I was very excited to be asked to do this presentation with another Dakota person, because I think one of the things that we know if we're going to be successful is that this is not just Silicon Valley. It's not just Harvard. It's not just East Coast, West Coast. The rest of the country counts. And there's amazing things that are happening in the rest of the country being driven by amazing leaders like yourself, President. And so I want to thank you so much and give you a few chances to make some introductory comments before we get into your information here.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I am very pleased. I was pleased to hear that you were going to be my moderator here. Sometimes people think North Dakota, South Dakota, we're probably great rivals, but actually we're more collaborators than we are rivals, just because we are in the middle of the country.
Except in football.
Except in football. Well, yes, you've got us on football, I mean, no doubt. But there are fewer people in the middle of the country, so we have to pool our resources together in order to do things. And I will say that at the academic level, the universities certainly work together quite a lot. And I think at the political level, we also work together and push for the middle of the country. So very important.
Absolutely. And you could maybe tell from her accent, she's probably not born and raised in the great state of South Dakota. So I want to just to kind of set the stage here for how it is that a pretty small school in Madison, South Dakota ended up being the epicenter for a lot of the great work that's happening, and tell your story about how you got involved in national security and how you ended up in the Dakotas.
Okay, thank you. So I've been around for a long time, as you can probably tell. I came to this country a long time ago and ended up, first of all, I went to UC Berkeley as a visiting professor, but then I was brought to Washington, D.C., and I spent 10 years in Washington, D.C. doing research for a number of federal agencies. But over that period of time, I got to know many, if not most, of the federal agencies. And that gave me good background. And I roamed around various academic institutions, large and small. And as I got to a certain point in my career where I'm looking for, at least one more thing to do before I decide to retire. And my husband has deep roots in Wyoming. And he was brought up he lived in Wyoming and in Iowa. And he wanted to move from the East Coast back towards the Midwest. And he found this university, Dakota State University, was advertising for a president. And what was intriguing about the university, it is a university that is heavily focused on computing, computer science, and all things information technology. And it's 40 years ago this year when it was given a new mission to be the computing and IT campus of the state regental system. And so everything they were doing there matched my background and my experience. And I thought, well, I can bring contacts. I've got contacts in Washington, I've got contacts in Silicon Valley and up in Seattle, and I can bring that to this small university.
Terrific. But you can see here, she's a big thinker and a conceptualizer of what these ideas look like. And I think this is an intriguing chart. And so we're going to spend most of our time in discussion about this. I'm hoping we can reserve a little time for your questions if you have any. But I want to turn it over to the president to talk about how she thinks about these three areas and why it is critical that we not just silo so much of that work. When we talk about AI, people just want to talk about AI. You can't do that without the context. And so, President, if you want to go ahead and offer some insights.
Thank you very well. I will start with the word cyber. And I go back to 1948. Norbert, we coined the term cyber and cybernetics, and it was everything applying to digital technologies. So when I use the term cyber on its own, that's what I mean, everything to do with digital technologies. I know cybersecurity people use it as a shorthand for cybersecurity, but if I mean cybersecurity, I say cybersecurity. So I just want you to understand that. And Dakota State is, in fact, probably one of the early cyber universities. So in 2019, I was appointed to the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence. I had been an artificial intelligence researcher at various points in my career when that kind of research was being funded. And while I was on that commission, we talked extensively about artificial intelligence. But Dakota State is very heavily involved in various aspects of cybersecurity. So in the back of my mind, I'm thinking cybersecurity, artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. You really need them both together. You can't do one. You could do one without the other. It's not wise to do that. So I started looking at this relationship between artificial intelligence and cybersecurity and how they interrelate in both directions. So just very briefly, this is a sort of conceptual diagram here, but artificial intelligence feeds cybersecurity in interesting ways. We can train artificial intelligence to do some of the work that our cybersecurity personnel do in the world. Anomaly detection, malware analysis, reverse engineering, privacy engineering. We can train AIs to do that, and perhaps we can reduce the need for those 800,000 vacancies in cybersecurity in the United States right now. On the other hand, if you're dealing with AI, you're dealing with a lot of data, and the more data you deal with, the more vulnerable it is to attack. And so on the other hand, we have, how does cybersecurity feed AI? Well, it does so by securing the data and avoiding people from poisoning your data, whether it be your training data or your live data. And also, I think just equally, if not more important, securing the AI models. Because actually, if you get to the model and you tweak the algorithm a little bit, you will do a lot more damage than you would do just by the data. I started saying artificial intelligence and cybersecurity are symbiotically related. They rely on each other if you're going to do both of them properly. And then along comes quantum computing, and people at Dakota State know I've been running around talking about quantum computing for a couple of years. You have to understand I am a theoretical nuclear physicist by background, so that's what generated my interest, and it's like going back to my physics roots, but I'm very excited about the quantum capabilities. But quantum computing is going to allow us to attack those very, very large questions, those large challenges that we have. Somebody talked this morning about curing cancer. We talk about maybe we could have actually accurate weather forecasting down to the minute and the location. Lots of things of that kind is going to require not just a lot of data, but a lot of compute capability. And where's that going to come from? It's going to come from quantum computing. So then I started looking at the relationship between AI and quantum computing. And we've started to talk about quantum AI, quantum machine learning, identifying highly complex patterns, analyzing vast and heterogeneous data sets for all sorts of things, drug development, molecular modeling, natural language processing, sentient analysis, and so on. It's got a lot of compute power. And then on the other hand, what is quantum computing going to do for artificial intelligence? Well, it's going to improve the efficiency and the speed of your ability to process data, your ability to run those models, generate results, improving the accuracy. So again, there's a relationship between quantum computing and artificial intelligence. Then if I go to the third leg here, the bottom layer, we have the relationship between quantum computing and cybersecurity. Well, quantum computing is going to power cybersecurity in big ways, help us get even more of those jobs taken care of through AI. But on the other hand, cybersecurity is greatly needed in the quantum computing arena because of the potential of the quantum machines to be able to break encryption of just about every classical system that we have in place. And we need to start looking at post-quantum encryption. So cybersecurity and quantum computing have this relationship that's also very important. And so as I think about this, and I finally started drawing it in a picture, I came down to this triangle of three things that are equally important. And then I thought, well, that's not enough. We have to have extensive broadband and network analysis. So for robust and resilient networks, for working with these likely distributed systems, we have to move towards 6G in the wireless world. We have to move towards 10G in the wired world. So there are new and evolving technology capabilities. And then I don't want people to forget that all these are power hungry. So again, if we're going to really use AI for these sort of major challenges that we can present to it, then we have to really figure out how to be much more efficient with the power that we use. So.
Yeah, I want to just kind of bring this back to what needs to happen to make to take the next steps in AI, to take the next steps in quantum computing, making sure that we have protected systems. That's going to take infrastructure, and it's going to take policy people like I used to represent, to really understand this dynamic. And I want to just congratulate the president here, because this conceptualizes it for so many people who are now saying, what do you need? They don't even know what this is. I mean, I will tell you honestly, I've served with most of these people. Some of them don't know how to send an email. So in case you have high expectations, they're getting there. And I think the project that Chuck Schumer has initiated to basically build the capacity, the intellectual capacity among members themselves to understand this. But it's not just the federal government. And one thing that we want to point out is when state governments and institutions of state governments initiate a discussion, they're going to want to know, what can we do to help our state be part of this explosion of the new technology? What can we do? And so I want to spend a little time talking about robust and resilient power. It's something that I've spent a lot of time in the state of North Dakota working on, making sure that the power grid is solid. But I think there is a resistance now, because you're seeing more and more in states like mine, where especially the crypto industry has come in, bought up old legacy places, putting more stress on the grid, more people concerned about what that looks like. And we right now do not have, in my opinion, even in the Dakotas where we produce a lot of power, do not have the power of the future to basically run these systems. And so my question to you is, how do you engage with the legislators of South Dakota? How do you engage with your colleagues here? I know you have great support among Senator Thune and Senator Rounds, and certainly Dusty Johnson, who's your congressman, is somebody who is a good thinker and thinks about what he needs to do to secure a future of South Dakota. But talk about the broadband needs and what's being done to build the robust and resilient power needs.
Thank you. Well, as I say, I worry ultimately, if we don't consider power as we're going forward, that will be the limiting resource on being able to do what we need to do. I mean, there are two ways to address it. One is to produce more power, and the other is to reduce consumption on the part of these technologies. So I think a sort of research going on, and I think the research some of the universities in North Dakota are doing, and perhaps School of Mines, are much more heavily focused on power. I think South Dakota State University is also doing some work in that arena. To actually try and reduce the reliance on existing power sources, and ensuring, and then we have the cybersecurity piece of that to try and make sure that the grids are actually secure from attacks. In terms of building more power, that would be in our in Department of Energy and other places. So we've got some interesting work going on there in the state, and including at the deep underground mine, where they're looking at how to leverage more power from the power sources we currently have.
So there's a big build out in this country happening right now, a massive amount of investment in rural broadband. What does that look like? For years, we feel like we've been left behind. So now we're investing, and the federal government is investing huge amounts of dollars. Are we doing enough to build the kind of resilient and robust system we need?
Well, Santa, it's very, very interesting. You know, many years ago, we had this issue of the digital divide, and it was whether people had telephones or didn't have telephones, and that evolved then. Did you have a home computer or not a home computer? And now it's, do you have broadband access or not? And I think we learned a lot during the COVID times when we found out that people at home didn't have the right capabilities to connect. Certainly broadband for all is a very, very important initiative. Certainly we have been doing our piece in South Dakota, and the legislature in South Dakota has also allocated South Dakota funds for this. We do have some topological challenges. The Badlands there are a few people in the Badlands, but it's hard to sort of get broadband to every element there. But I think with a combination of the more traditional telecoms and the use of low orbit satellites, we'll actually be able to get there. We, of course, have, as you do, large reservations for the Indian tribes. And those also have a certain level of broadband, but not the level of broadband that they're going to need if they want to take advantage of educational opportunities, healthcare opportunities, and hybrid work opportunities. And so we do still have a digital divide. Network access is part of it. And I think ultimately we'll start to see robust power will also become part of that.
And not to just make this about rural places. There's plenty of places where we have power and resiliency and redundancy problems in this country. It's not just in rural places. And so when we're looking at infrastructure and we think about roads and bridges, the infrastructure of the future is going to, this triangle here is going to be a critical component of that infrastructure of the future. I want to spend just a few minutes talking about your favorite topic. You can see this is someone who could easily find a job anywhere in America, but yet she's working in education. And so I want you to appreciate that because it comes with a monetary sacrifice, but it is absolutely so essential. So people who are passionate in this area, I find, tend to find their place in education, tend to find their place in developing workforce, whether that's at a high school level, engaging and making people interested, but then training. And you have been doing such a marvelous job in not just recruiting students, but giving them the future tools, not just doing what people were doing 10 years ago in coding and this is your future, but really laying out an incredible, what seems like complex, but in many ways simplifies very complicated ideas. So talk about workforce and what you're doing and why it's so important that we not just look at MIT or the University of Chicago. I think we should always look at the University of Chicago because I carry that flag right now, right? But we also know that this workforce, we won't be able to graduate enough people at the University of Chicago or at MIT or at Harvard to do the work that needs to be done to make America competitive. So talk about the work that you're doing in South Dakota to grow workforce.
Okay, we have a number of things. So let me start with the traditional. I always say that we are not educating people for today. We're educating people for the future. And so we have to have an environment that allows them to experiment and learn what the future can bring. And we do that heavily through simulation and virtual environments, virtualized environments. We have a number of traditional degree programs. We have no community colleges in the state. So we offer everything from associate degrees through to PhDs. But I like to say DSU has, I wish I had another chart with me, a 360-degree approach to education. So at the noon hour, imagine a clock face, we have our traditional degrees, as I've just described them. In these areas, we have degrees in computer science, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, quantum computing we'll have shortly, a certificate in quantum computing, and then our other traditional programs. But we also have, at the 9 o'clock position, articulation agreements with other colleges and schools. So, for example, the technical schools in the state all articulate in community colleges around the country, especially those that have the Center of Academic Excellence 2-year designation. Bismarck State has that. And those students can carry those degrees into our degree and continue to do their work online. We have similar agreements with the NSA, with Army Cyber, where their personnel can take the technical training that they've received. We do an extensive review of how that relates to our academic programs, and they can carry those into our degrees and complete online. So that's number two. The third piece we're very excited about, is a project called the Governor's Cyber Academy. This is where we go into the high schools across South Dakota. We intend eventually to be in every high school. We've just started it last fall. And juniors and seniors in high school can take university courses for academic credit as well as high school credit. So if they take our programs, they can get a full year of college education, and not just the courses are, for the most part, in these degree areas. It's not just your English and your basic math and your one social science. It's in the majors, and students then will come accelerated into our program. And then the fourth area, the 3 o'clock position, we have spun off an organization, a nonprofit called DSU SOAR, which is focused on agile and responsive workforce education. So when people in the workforce say, we need a short course on A or B, or we have people who we want to take this over a period of several weeks, we will custom develop a program and offer it to them. There's where the advantage of a small institution comes in handy. We can move fairly quickly to respond to workplace needs. So, as I say, a 360 approach.
So it's an incredible opportunity for students to understand what that looks like. And I think the opportunity in our states to look at applications in traditional industries, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's in energy, to think about what you may say, I want to be a power plant manager. Can you be a power plant manager in the future without understanding protection of your systems, without understanding kind of how artificial intelligence applies, and then eventually this idea of how fast the systems can respond? And so I think it is so smart to think about workforce, not just in terms of the big thinkers with the big ideas, but also giving people skills that are necessary for implementation of systems. And so I'm going to offer you all an opportunity to quiz the professor here about her triangle. And if you don't have questions, we can continue to talk on. Are there any questions? Yeah. Why don't you take my microphone?
You have it going.
She has an extra one there. If we can't hear it, we'll repeat the question for you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Griffiths, I've been following you since your Hill op-ed on high-skilled immigration last year. I do immigration for AI entrepreneurs and researchers in Silicon Valley. And I think what you wrote is so important. And I know there's another panel on talent with the National Security Report. I was just curious, do you think there's any way we can squeeze in some high-skilled immigration into one of these AI statutes that might be coming, or do we have any other tools we can use to help keep the world's best and brightest researchers in the U.S.? Thank you.
Well, immigration, well, the fact is that talent exists everywhere, and we do not have sufficient talent just in this country alone. And so the idea is we need to have high-tech immigration, and we need to try and increase that. That was the success of post-war United States with immigrants from Europe and elsewhere, and it's been very, very successful. As an immigrant myself, I certainly would promote it, but it emerged towards the end of our discussions on workforce development out of the National Security Commission, and I will continue to push for that. I mean, for years we pushed for H-1B visas, whichever institution I was with. But, we can't just rely on domestic talent. We need to, and as I think we've heard a lot in the Ash-Carter Exchange, we've been hearing a lot about the importance of collaboration and connection and reaching out. And I think that the allied nations could certainly improve the flow of talent through those organizations so that, in fact, each country can take the benefit where the talent is needed, where the development is happening. So I would hope that we'd begin to see more. But you've sat in Congress. You know more about that side of things than I do.
I think that we have maybe rightfully conflated the border challenges with reasonable immigration reform. There was an immigration reform bill that got almost 70 votes in the United States Senate, which was really geared towards a skills-based system. That failed against political challenges. We have to have the political will in this country to solve this problem. And right now it is too big of a political advantage for one side or the other. And so hopefully after this next election, reasonable people will come forward and we will see an honest discussion about what we need to do in our immigration system. Question there?
There's been a lot of talk about trajectory, trying to look out 5, 10, 15 years.
Can you hold your mic a little? There you go.
There's been a lot of talk about trajectory, 5, 10, 15 years. how is the United States going to compete in the telecommunications sector when we rely on two companies, Ericsson and Nokia, for our next generation infrastructure?
Good question. We've fallen behind with our developments, and as I say, you can't do. Everybody says how important artificial intelligence is. We're going to hear the wave towards quantum technologies in general. If we're going to do this and not just eat away at small problems, if we're going to really leverage the technologies, we have to solve that problem. So it's industry is going to have to participate. The educational institutions are going to have to prepare more people, and the political and legislative side of things are going to have to do their job too.
I think you can take some heart in the fact that CHIPS passed and that they saw an existential threat in the lack of semiconductors, and I think there is a lot of concern about consolidation and concentration, and where those companies are located and how much leverage they have against us. But I totally agree with you, and maybe she wants to add a line at the bottom for problems that need to be solved in order to scale up America's dominance in this area.
Yeah.
Another question? There we go.
President, you've got robust and resilient power as, I'd say, the foundational aspect there. Could you expand on how much power shortfall is there to power up all of this potential trajectory to artificial intelligence, and what solutions are you involved in? Are you talking nuclear? Do you have solar panels at the university? Would love to hear what the actual, because we're not going to move anywhere without the power.
Okay, that's an interesting question. So our university is heavily focused on the computing environment, less on the power. We don't have engineering or anything. And, I come from the UK, and I'm a theoretical nuclear physicist. So not speaking for anybody else but myself, I am in favor of nuclear power. Small nuclear power stations are quite capable and can be built fairly quickly. However, the political will in this country since 3 Mile Island has been very much against nuclear powers, but Europe has been investing in nuclear power. So again, I think we can look to see what others have done and what's been working. But ultimately, we are going to have to work at both ends of the spectrum. One is, how do we get more power to everyone, and how do we reduce the power need of the different kinds of applications that we're going to have.
Just by way of context, I served on the Basin Electric, actually, the Dakota Gas Board, which is a subsidiary of Basin Electric. A lot of the power that she's talking about actually comes from the Basin system. And what I would tell you is that we need to understand that the event horizon from thinking about what we need to do to actually getting an electron on the grid is 4 or 5 years at the shortest period of time. Even if you're doing, small scale solar, small scale wind turbine reports or electricity. And so the essential need is to sit down. And I will tell you what the impediment is. It's not the technology or trying to figure out how we're going to do that. It's how can we assure the institutions that are required to do this that there's going to be a return on investment? Because if efficiencies come and all of a sudden the demand is 50% less than what we're projecting now, that's excess power that I guess somebody living on fixed income is going to have to pay for. And so if you're looking for a government kind of involvement there, I think basically appreciating, we're going to make an estimate right now of how much power we need. We need to be able to make that investment of capital on the idea that the situation today is correct, but also providing some risk mitigation for companies that are required to do this. And so that creates a really interesting challenge. And on top of that, a lot of the new technologies, whether we're looking at battery technologies for renewables, are really heavily dependent on critical minerals, and critical minerals are is a huge problem. Yeah, you want to add that to the, critical minerals, and there's been a number of reports. And if those of you who are interested in the issue of critical minerals, there's a book done by a friend of mine. It's called The War Below, talking about the challenges of developing critical minerals here. We're getting a wrap. You guys have been a wonderful audience. Isn't she fabulous? Isn't she? Aren't we grateful for immigration? Actually, we're grateful for her husband for bringing her here. I asked her how she ended up in this country. She said, love. So that's good. Thank you all for being such a terrific audience.
Thank you.
The Griffiths show. Take care. Second.